I was checking on the sun exposure.
Just remember that we're live streaming right now and recording. And you want me to promote Lori, Andy, and Tanya, correct? You're muted.
It's just going to be Tanya and Andy. You can bring Lori up as a panelist in case she needs to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. It looks like we're still waiting for one more board member, I believe, so we will give him a couple minutes before we get started. All right, it looks like we have all of the board members now on. So I'd like to call the meeting to order at 8:03. And Secretary Atha, could you do a roll call?
Yes, Chair Watts,
Here.
Board Member Walsh,
Here.
Board Member Wright.
Here.
Great, thank you. I would just like to remind everybody to mute their phones and microphones when they're not speaking. And with that, I will open it up for public comment. We are now taking public comments. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Atha, do we have any live or email or voice messages?
Yeah. We do not have any public comments.
I'm sorry, did I skip something, or is there just an echo going on? Is my microphone working? Okay. Okay, so we have no public comments then?
That's correct. We have no public comments.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Thank you. Great. So we will move to item 3.1. Director Burke, if you could introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair Watts and members of the committee. Our only item today will be a review of the water, wastewater, and regional fiscal year 2021-22 O&M and CIP budgets. And if the committee is so inclined, we're also making a recommendation to the BPU at this meeting. And Kimberly Zanino, our Deputy Director of Water and Water Administration, will be leading off the presentation.
Good morning, Chair Watson, members of the committee. I'm going to share my screen and I will run the presentation. All right, so as Director Burke mentioned, we are going to go over the proposed fiscal year 21-22 O&M, CIP, and regional budgets. And at the end, if you are comfortable, we will be requesting a recommendation to the full Board of Public Utilities. Much of this is going to be exactly the same as you've seen before, as nothing has changed since we programmed the budget before the preliminary presentation, but we'll go through and remind you of all the things that we covered previously. We are going to go over the staff assumptions. We'll go over the local wastewater and water budgets. We'll go over the regional budget and the partner contributions, as well as a CIP review for all of the funds, the budget schedule, and then the recommendation. We will be adding some information on the CIP portion today, which will be a little bit more detail on some of the highlighted projects. So as we mentioned before, and as I know we are all aware, we are going to bring the projection for water sales down by 10%. This also means that we reduce our expenditures by 10%, but it does mean that we would be seeing a reduction in revenue on the water side based on the anticipation of a dry year and the possibility of restrictions on water use this year. The sewer usage, we are expecting only to be decreasing slightly. This is because of residential sewer caps. It makes it a lot less volatile than the water side. And also the fact that as we see commercial businesses opening, we might see a slight uptick in the commercial sewer usage. So we're expecting that to decrease, but not nearly as significantly as on the water side. We do expect demand fees to increase slightly, and then we expect all other revenues to remain about the same as far as percentage goes, and increases and decreases. And then we are proposing this budget based on the approval of the rate schedule that has come before you, and will be going forward on May 25th to a public hearing. As you can see in water and local wastewater, which we'll do separate from sub-regional, so you will see the regional fund separately from this. There are some decreases and some slight increases, but overall we are flat in all of our funds. On these next two slides, we are just giving you line items that roll up different categories in our budget. I will point out a couple of them because they're not clearly defined by what they're called. The uncategorized line item, which is that first line item there, is for operations and maintenance projects. And these are projects that are covered not in the CIP. They're things like work on the UFO or the parking lot at the UFO, or modifications inside of our buildings. And these projects are not housed in the CIP, but they're housed in our O&M budgets. The other miscellaneous line item includes things like rental equipment, leases, training, copier services, and on the water side, it also holds our H2O program. And then the items that are increasing this year, you'll see our vehicle costs are going up, insurance is going up, and indirect costs are showing as increasing in the water and the local wastewater. But as we discussed at the last meeting, that really has to do with a redistribution of the internal overhead, which is the administration fund. So that is the group of the administration of water, such as Director Burke, myself, my team, our support services, and some of the other groups that support all three of the funds. And so you'll see there's an increase on the water and the wastewater side, but you'll see a decrease when we get to the sub-regional side on that. The other line items in that indirect costs are also our overhead citywide, which is our portion of the city manager's office, the city attorney's office, HR. So those different departments in the city that we pay for a portion of. And then utilities are up also based on increased costs to us, but you will see a slightly higher uptick in the water fund, and that has to do with an increase in electricity being used for pumping at the Farmers Lane well, and also because we added climate control to that facility, which increases the cost there. This slide is the same as on the water side. This is the local wastewater side. As you can see, everything is trending about the same. That increase, of course, again, in the indirect costs, which I pointed out before, insurance and vehicle costs also increasing. The next two slides just give you those expenditures in a different look so that you can see it graphically. Just a pie chart to show you where all of those expenditures are going and what the categories are. That is the water fund. And there is the wastewater fund. We always show you what the purchase of water, what's happening with the purchase of water. As we already discussed, we are anticipating or projecting a decrease in water sales. And then also, as you have seen previously, Sonoma Water is increasing their wholesale rate to us by 3.47%. It is going from $966 or $967 basically an acre foot to $1,000 an acre foot. On the next two slides, we like to give you a different look at the budget from a revenue to expenditure so that you can see that we are making sufficient revenues to cover the expenditures we're planning on. On the water side, once again, because we are projecting a slight decrease in water sales due to the possible water restrictions that may happen. We are slightly under in revenue compared to our expenditures. However, we do have sufficient fund balance to cover that. As you have been seeing in some of the presentations we've been giving you, if it were to get much more severe than that, we would be then talking about some of those other proposed rates that we have been working on, which are for a water shortage. But as projected, we have enough fund balance to cover. On the wastewater side, we are just about even. So looking great. Revenue and expenditure is right on target. And now I will go through the regional fund and the regional allocations from our partners, or the contribution from our partners. So first I'll talk about the budget drivers for this year. As we have discussed many times, we did secure a bond last year at the end of last year. This was for our UV replacement project. It was a $70 million bond. We got some very favorable interest rates. We also had some premiums on the bonds, so it was very successful for the city. It does increase our debt service by a little over $2 million. However, it's important to note that we had expected, had things not been so favorable for us, that it was going to be $3 million annually that we would have seen an increase in debt service. Professional services is increasing. This is due to an agreement with LizTech, which is the agreement we put into place so that we could decommission the biosolids composting facility. While we are seeing an increase in the yearly budget right now, we expect for that agreement to save us $8.7 million over the next 20 years and a significant amount of capital costs because that facility was degrading very rapidly and would have cost millions of dollars to repair. On the O&M projects, you're also going to see an increase there. This is due to a couple factors. It's a combination of the UV system aging. Since we don't have it replaced yet, we have to do additional maintenance in order to comply with our regulatory requirements on that system. So those costs are going up for this year. We are also at the 24,000 hour service for our CHP engines and generators. And so we needed to put that project into the O&M as well. And we can't suggest delaying any of those maintenance projects. As we see that system age, it creates more emergency projects for us. So it's very important for us to keep up on these maintenance items this year. So because of those two increases, the the O&M increases and the increase in professional services, we are seeing a 1.6 increase or 1.6% increase on the O&M budget this year. Debt service, which is the bond that we secured for the UV system, is increasing our debt service by 9%. And then you'll also see that we are increasing CIP by $1 million, which is what we have agreed upon with our partners, that we would increase the cash funding in CIP by $1 million a year. This is the same as you saw on the water and the local wastewater side. Here you'll see that those indirect costs are going down due to that redistribution that I discussed. You can see that those uncategorized, which are those O&M projects that I discussed, going up, and also the professional services based on that LizTech agreement. This slide is another graphic just showing you where all the expenditures go. This includes, however, the miscellaneous revenues that are applied to the fund, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the next couple slides. These come directly off of the operations and maintenance total budget or projected budget. And then we also have a slight increase in the O&M reserve because we are required to keep a 15% operating and maintenance reserve. So there's a slight $31,000 increase based on that increase in O&M. So we use this slide to give you a picture of what all the costs are that will be distributed between our partners outside of debt service. So you'll see that's our total operating costs, expenditures on the first line. And then we have the $8 million for the CIP cash funding. And then there's that increase of $31,000 to bring up the operations and maintenance reserve to 15%. Then you can see down at the bottom, that's where we are removing those miscellaneous revenues. The miscellaneous revenues are for our revenues that actually come straight into the regional fund. They are for things like the high strength waste program, the sale of recycled water, payments from the Geysers Power Company in Windsor, and then other small revenues that come directly into the facility and benefit all of the partners. And then these expenditures or these revenues are applied to the operations and maintenance expenditures and reduced from that line item before we distribute to the partners. Excuse me. So this is the total allocation that is proposed for the budget this year for all of our partners. They are distributed differently. O&M is distributed based on an actual percentage of flow. So the flow actually coming into the plant from each one of our partners from a previous year is how we determine how we will distribute the operations and maintenance portion of the budget. The CIP is distributed on a defined percentage or defined percentages, which are actually in the agreement with our partners. And then debt service is distributed based on the repayment schedules of when the debt was incurred and the type of the projects that the funds were used for. You can see that the main increases here are the debt service, as we've discussed, for that new bond that we secured at the end of last year, and then the increase in cash funding for CIP. That is where the main increases come from for the fund this year and the distribution to each of the partners. I will remind you that Santa Rosa's allocation is covered by the rates that are collected from our wastewater ratepayers. I'll let you take a look at that for a second before I move on to the next section. So now we're going to move into our capital improvement program. I'll talk a little bit about how much we are funding each of the CIP programs, and then I will be handing the presentation off to some other folks on the meeting. We always like to show you all of the assets that we have and that we are taking care of. We have a very large system that is very well cared for. And so we like to just show you this slide that gives you the numbers and the statistics on how much we take care of each year. This slide is just showing you the total amount of funding that is going to each one of our CIP plans. On the water side, we are budgeting $13.8 million. On the wastewater side, almost 12.8. And then on the regional side, $8 million to the cash funding for that CIP plan. These are the 5-year sheets. We just give you this picture to remind you, how to look at them. Last week, I also sent out an email to all of you that had a little presentation that you could run that shows you how to read those 5-year CIP sheets. We know we had some technical difficulties last time, so we wanted to make sure that you were able to actually know what each section of those sheets means and how to understand them. The sheets have not changed since we sent them to you last time, or since they were delivered to you last time. And so those sheets are the same. And with that, I am now going to be turning this over to Andrew Allen, who is going to go through the CIP and some highlights for water and local wastewater.
Thank you, Deputy Director Zanino. Thank you to the members of this committee for letting me present here to you today. So we'll start off with our proposed water CIP and a pie chart breakdown of where those funds are headed. Obviously, a big part is the water mains. We do have a significant portion to reservoirs, and we've got our grant projects as well as big pieces. So next slide. A little simpler on this pie, a big portion going to sewer trunks, which is a real focus for us these days. Those trunks are aging, and we're putting our efforts and finances to the sewer trunks, but we aren't forgetting the sewer mains and services. A little sliver for our master plans, studies, and miscellaneous. We had sufficient funding to make it through this year, and as you look on the budget sheets, the out years have more money going into that category, but that's why that sits as it is this year. Next slide, please. So this the map gives you an overview of where our CIP projects are, our local water and wastewater CIP projects. We have 2 new, and only 2, surprisingly, that's rare that we have so few brand new projects. Those are the red dots in the map. And that's one of those is a neighborhood sewer project, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And the other is a sewer trunk project rehabilitation. And again, we have multiple continuation projects, sewer trunks, neighborhood replacements, and reservoir upgrades. They're all key to continuing operations of our water and wastewater system. Next slide. So we'll go with one of the 2 brand new projects. This is the Sherwood Forest Neighborhood Phase 1. So you'll probably see this in the future. Future phases will be coming, but this is kind of the backbone that goes up Sherwood and needs to be placed first. We've got some existing 6-inch and 8-inch AC and concrete pipe that needs to be replaced, all aged out. And of course, in addition, the water along with the sewer aging out. Next slide, please. This is the other brand new project, Robles trunk lining. If you look at previous years, you'll know that the more downstream phase is in design or in the works. So this is the next step, moving up the Robles trunk, headed towards the city. Very important that we do that. We've got, this is 270 feet of the 45-inch sewer trunk that we will be lining. And as I indicated there, phase 1 is currently in design, and this will be the next step as we move up this particular trunk. Next slide, please. So these are two, I'm going to talk a little bit about two other projects that aren't brand new projects, but we're putting some significant funding in this year. They've started, but now we're putting more money into it. The East Haven Foothill Drive Sewer and Water Improvements, Phase 6. So we have been working in this neighborhood, continuing to upgrade the sewer and water mains, along with being VCP sewer. We're helping with the fire flow in that area as we upsize those water mains. Next slide. It's not a new project, but we are moving it forward. This is the Leet Well rehabilitation. Leet Well is one of our emergency wells. However, we are not using it, or not able to use it right now, because there's a separation in the lining of that, the casing, excuse me, of that well. And so we are going to evaluate what the issues are with that casing, and look at ways to bring that existing system up online. And that's where we're putting some money this year and future years headed to take care of that. So those are the four projects I'll be talking about. There's obviously many more on, as you can see on the budget sheets, but those are some highlights we wanted to present to you. Next slide, please. So now we're going to turn over the presentation to Tanya Mokwitz, who will talk. She's our water reuse engineer, and she'll talk about the regional system.
Thank you, Andy. Good morning all, and thank you for your attention. I will go over the next few slides. Over the last year, asset management team has been working together with regional operations staff, and based on their input and our master plan and risk of failure analysis, we have identified CIP funding needs for the next year. So our regional 2020-2021 year budget would fund approximately 69% of planned infrastructure improvements, 24% of master planning in miscellaneous studies, and 7% in geysers infrastructure improvements projects. I'm not going to go over every project. I will just highlight most notable, urgent, and critical projects. Next slide, please. The first one that I would like to highlight is from our master plan. It's emergency generator fuel tank replacement project. This is a critical regional project that asset management has been actively working on. We funded engineering evaluation and design efforts portion last year. This year, we're funding construction portion of the project for a total amount of $1.5 million. This project will replace the existing underground 15,000 gallon diesel fuel tank that serves our two emergency generators with the above ground 20,000 gallon diesel tank. The existing tank exhibits signs of deformation and is undersized for increased generators demand due to higher frequencies of PSPS. As part of those efforts, we will also install gasoline fueling station at the treatment plant, as the closest one that we have is at the Brown Farm. Next slide, please. The next important project is Laguna treatment plant electrical infrastructure improvements. This project is critical to the plant and also was identified in our master plan. It will evaluate and complete treatment plant electrical system. The project objective is to maintain and improve our electrical infrastructure reliability. As part of the evaluation process, we will develop structured maintenance program. We will also develop a list of CAP projects with priorities, cost, schedule, while utilizing condition assessment to quantify the probability of failure, along with consequences of failure. We will also update our 2016 Power Master Plan. Similar to emergency generator fuel tank replacement project, we funded engineering evaluation portion last year. This year, we're funding construction of critical electrical improvements project that needs to happen sooner than later. Next slide, please. Next project that I would like to bring your attention to is Aeration Basins and Aeration Header Improvement. It represents one of the new projects that was recently identified as critical and urgent. Laguna treatment plant staff discovered that low pressure air duct that conveys processed air between the blower building and aeration basin is leaking. The existing pipe was installed in 1994, is about 15 feet deep and approximately 230 feet long. The blue dashed line on the left picture shows approximate location of the underground pipe between the blower building and aeration basin. The pipe is in danger of collapsing due to poor structural integrity and heavy soil loads. Maintenance staff also noted that corrosion damage and air leakage are present at many of the above-grade air valves where piping routes air to submerged diffusers inside of our aeration basins. Picture on the right shows an example of that corrosion. This project will replace underground low-pressure air duct. It will also evaluate and replace all aeration basin low-pressure pipes, fittings, and valves. Due to our CAP teams continue to be understaffed and urgency of this project, we are currently looking at alternative project delivery methods. Next slide, please. And finally, I will go over the maintenance building roof improvements project, which is another urgent project that was identified recently. Our maintenance staff discovered leaks in the roof over the equipment in the maintenance building. Our CAP team is currently working with a contractor on a quote to temporarily repair the roof. We're expecting the project cost to be in the neighborhood of under $300,000. The temporary repair will extend the roof life for at least 5 years, which will give us time to fund, design, and construct a permanent roof replacement. Next slide, please. So this concludes my portion of the presentation. But before I turn it over back to Kimberly, our team would be happy to address any questions or concern that you might have.
Do any board members have any questions at this time? Board Member Walsh.
Thank you, Chair Watts. Tanya, I just missed it on the aeration basins project. The CIP team is at capacity, and you mentioned alternative project delivery methods. What does that mean?
We are working with our own call designer and see what options we might have as far as expediting the design of the project and construction.
Oh, okay. So just bringing in outside help. Oh, cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation.
Any other questions at this time?
Here, you see me?
Yes, I see you now. Thank you. Board Member Wright.
Okay, two simple questions. First of all, who's doing the local, or have you chosen who's going to do the local wastewater master plan? And secondly, on the roadway's trunk, it looks to me like it's more than 270 feet. So I'm assuming what you have budgeted is the first phase, and I'm guessing that might be where it turns the corner. But anyway, I'm just curious about that as well. I think those are for Andy.
So the current wastewater master plan is being done by Woodard and Curran, and we're in the process on that project. And your other question, Glenn, I apologize.
Oh, it's on the roadway's trunk.
Yes.
And you said 270 feet, but the graphic shows a lot more than 270 feet. So I'm assuming 270 feet must be the first phase.
I'd have to look that up myself. That was the information in the database. So
Oh, okay.
I can get back to you on that,
Yeah, it's okay.
board member, right? But
I just,
we'll definitely complete the work. So the first phase.
Oh, I know, no, I understand that. I was just wondering, that's obviously multiple phases then.
Yes, the entire Robles trunk is being done in phases. So I might have missed that that dimension on there, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, it looks like we can proceed.
So I will take back over. If there were any other questions about any of the other budget pieces of the presentation as well, please feel free to ask them now. You're always welcome to follow up with us afterwards as well if any questions do arise later, especially about projects. As always, you would just reach out to Director Burke and she would find the appropriate person to answer any questions you might have. This is the current budget schedule. We are going to meet this, when I put the slide together, this was to be determined, but we are now meeting with the regional partners on the 29th. We will then meet with them again on the 1st in order to get their recommendation to the Board of Public Utilities on the distribution and allocation of the expenditures for the regional system. And then we will also be at the subcommittee if necessary. Again, on the 29th, we have a scheduled meeting if today you decide that you would like to have one more meeting. Our schedule is also to be at the full Board of Public Utilities on April 1st. We will be holding a study session on all three funds, operations and maintenance, CIP, and the regional funds and CIP. We will be back on the 15th to the Board of Public Utilities for the recommendation to City Council. And then April 27th, we will be at City Council to do the preliminary approval of the regional budget. Since we need to notify our partners by May 1st, we have to bring that to them early as just a preliminary approval. And then May 11th and 12th are the budget study sessions this year with City Council. And then consideration of adoption of the budget will be on June 22nd this year. With that, once again, interrupt at any time if you want to. Oh, I'm sorry. Board Member Walsh, you had a question.
Yes, thank you very much. And through the chair, to Kimberly, just a couple comments and then two small questions. One on comment, I think the O&M charges look really good. They're compared to the actuals from fiscal 19 and in the prior budget. Looks like we're holding down costs as good as we can. I appreciate that. And then I'm assuming the O&M for the UV maintenance, you said that's a budget driver. We're increasing that by $428,000. That will go down in the short run once the new UV is up and running. But then maybe we'll have to, of course, budget in some maintenance of the new UV system so we don't wind up back in the similar position where you're fixing old stuff that's not necessarily efficient. So I appreciate that as well. And then a couple of questions on the miscellaneous revenues that come in, or the ancillary revenues that come in that are offset in the regional fund. How do we calculate those, or is it by contract? How do we calculate the charges for the recycled wastewater?
So we have set charges. We just have to make a projection. This year, we are not projecting collecting very much from the recycled system based on the fact that we do not have a lot of recycled water, unfortunately, this year. And so the projection is very low on that piece. The other pieces, like the Geysers Power Company revenue that comes in, that's a set amount per our agreement. They pay us $300 a year. I believe that still goes on for another several years before it ends. And then Windsor pays us to do some environmental compliance work for them. So that is also a set amount that we know, and also to add recycled water to the Geysers pipeline. The tipping or the high strength waste program, we have been watching that revenue go up. We saw it decreasing a little bit again this year because one of the main contributors to that, or I guess main dumpers in that program, put their own facility together, but then that facility wasn't working well. So now it's going back up again, and we have another facility that's coming in, and we're going to start actually working on promoting that program even more to try and bring those revenues up. So we just look at each one of the revenues, how the expenditures have been over the years, and whether it's a contracted amount or what we're going to project that they will be.
I see. And the 300,000 per year to the geysers, that's for quite a lot of the wastewater. So is that by a long-term contract that can't be changed?
Yeah, that's by the long-term contract. They participated in installing that system. So they don't actually pay us for a volume of water. We need to deliver that based on the agreement with them and their participation in actually building the geysers pipeline that goes up to the geysers and recharges the fields. But they do have a specific amount that they agreed to pay year over year, which was that $300,000.
Thank you very much. And then on the water side, do we charge Santa Rosa municipal facilities for water use?
We do.
Okay, thanks very much. That's all the questions I have.
Any other board member questions? I had a quick question about, I think it was in the maintenance of the facilities. I was just wondering when you talked about, providing funds to provide some necessary maintenance that will pretty much take off some of the long-term expenses that we have with updating those facilities. I was wondering, in the budget, what do we mark depreciation for these facilities, and which line item would that be in?
We do not add that to this budget. The finance department keeps track of our assets, and we use those depreciations when we do things like our rate studies, our demand fee studies. All of those are included in those, but they aren't actually a part of the operations and maintenance budget. Some of the facilities we're in, we share a facility with Transportation and Public Works for part of our water team. That facility that we are in is old. I don't know that it even could depreciate anymore. So there isn't a lot other than, just projects maybe that might have to happen, or reconfigurations inside for the water teams, that might have to happen. But the UFO, we do have things that we need to work on. We need to work on sometimes the HVAC system, or like I said, the parking lot might need to be striped, or maybe it needs to be, maintained to some extent. So those are the kinds of projects that are used for those, for that uncategorized line item.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions? All right, so we will now take public comments on item 3.1. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Atha, do we have any live or email or voicemail public comments at this time?
We have no public comments.
Great. So I believe we have a recommendation before us.
So I will make this recommendation to you. Santa Rosa Water staff requests the Board of Public Utilities Budget Subcommittee recommend the proposed fiscal year 2021-22 operations and maintenance, CIP and debt service budgets, and the regional partner allocation to the Board of Public Utilities.
Chair Watts, I'd like to make a motion.
Great.
I move that the Budget Subcommittee of the Board of Public Utilities recommend to the Board of Public Utilities approval of the wastewater rates, wastewater budget, O&M and CIP, regional budget, O&M and CIP, and water budget, O&M CIP for the fiscal year 21-22 as presented by staff.
Do we
I
have-
will second.
Great, thank you, Board Member Walsh and Wright. With that, Secretary Atha, can you do a roll call vote?
Yes, Chair Watts,
Aye.
Board Member Walsh,
Aye.
Board Member Wright,
Aye. Hey, I just noticed everybody in the subcommittee's last name starts with W. We're all at the end of the alphabet. I'm still last though.
I was last for many years, Board Member Wright, so I appreciate that. All right, so it looks like that passes. You have a recommendation out of this committee to go in front of the full BPU. With that, I do believe this concludes our meeting, and wait, Director Burke.
Yeah, so Chair Watts, thank you. Pardon the interruption, but two things. One, just wanted to very much thank the committee for all their work with staff on this. Based on this, we won't have the third meeting. So just you should expect a cancellation. So wanted to let you all know. And then we will plan to bring this to the board and study session, to your first meeting in April, and then the recommendation to the second meeting. And then also Andy Allen was able to get additional information, and Board Member Wright, you are correct. It's 2,700 feet, not 270 feet. So we missed a zero in that presentation. So thank you for calling that out, and we'll correct that going forward.
Thank you. And thank you, staff, for all your work on this. I know it's been, again, another difficult budget year with things not predicted. So thank you all for your time, and the rest of the committee, and look forward to canceling our third meeting that you all were so efficient in this process. So thank you. And with that, we will adjourn.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.
Bye, folks. Bye, Glenn.